Welcome to Chaotic Harmony. My name is John.
This is Crystal. We talk about the joys and the challenges of teaching music in the elementary school classroom.
We share struggles, we brainstorm solutions.
And we would love to have you join us.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Chaotic Harmony, episode 119. If you're worried what happened to Jonathan or wondering where Crystal is, don't worry, they're still alive and well. We're changing things up on this intermission episode. I am your host for today, Genesis Santos, and I am super excited to be hosting my very first episode of the cast. And on my first go around, I am joined by some lovely, tremendous, stupendous, funky, fresh individuals with all the aura, who's doing all the beautiful work in their areas of the world. Today, I'm joined by Darlene Machacon.
Hi everyone.
I'm also joined by Rachel Pack.
Hey y'all.
And because I told you not to worry, Jonathan Seligman himself.
I'm alive, y'all. I'm alive. Somehow.
Welcome, everybody. How are all y'all doing?
Doing well.
Wonderful.
Good.
Oh, that's good. Great. Awesome. I need to target John for a little bit before we get to the meat of everything. How does it feel to not host an episode and be in the interview seat today?
I mean, I'm used to that. The first several seasons we've done, like Crystal took the lead in a lot of them. So I'm all for that life. But it's different that you're running this. So, I'm taking my notes. I'm taking notes on you, good sir. And no, I'm down. I'm enjoying this. Life be good.
Awesome. All right. So before we begin to the meat and potatoes of this episode, a bit of housekeeping for all our regular listeners. In our last intermission episode, Kat Wu and Joshua Block chatted with Jonathan and Crystal about the benefits and thoughts of ORF levels. If you haven't seen that, please do check it out. In addition, we are about to have the opening of our 7th season. The school year is about to start for some, and others are already in full swing. So in that episode, the Chaotic Harmony crew will be sharing their hopes and their thoughts for this coming school year. So please check that out when that comes out. So the reason we are all here, right? For this episode, we're taking an intermission, another one, and inviting these distinguished human beings to recap and reflect on a rather unique experience that happened this past summer. Nearly a month ago, the three of you attended what is the second annual Asian American Pacific Islander and Canadian Canadian music education gathering in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Say that 10 times fast.
Sorry, it is not St. Cloud. It is St. Paul.
Oh, wait, not St. Cloud. Where was it this year?
St. Paul. Is there a St.
St.
Cloud?
Paul.
I
believe there's
Mr.
St. Cloud.
I love the way St.
Cloud
Cloud sounds.
Okay, sorry, St. Paul. I apologize.
Should we just have you redo that?
No, we're keeping this. We're keeping this.
No, we need to redo it.
No.
They're probably going to cut this out, but yeah. Sorry, St. Paul, Minnesota. The St. Cloud does exist, but St. Paul.
Does it? Where does St. Cloud?
It does. It's somewhere. I know it exists because I watched way too much How I Met Your Mother to know that that exists.
Oh, it is it? Wow, St. Cloud is in Minnesota. Yes.
Is it actually in Minnesota?
It is actually in Minnesota.
Yes, it's actually in Minnesota.
We should have had it there.
St. Paul, not St. Cloud.
Who's
Sounds
Cloud?
like a beautiful dystopia.
Saints.
So yes.
Run that by y'all. Okay. Just for one more time, right? It is the second Asian American Pacific Islander and Asian Canadian music education gathering in St. Paul, Minnesota. Right. The first one was back in 2023, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And that is where actually the four of us met. Some of us for the first time, some who were like gawking, speaking of me in particular, and meeting some of these, famous people that he's been listening to going on, Jonathan and Darlene. And it was a lovely experience. So to opening it for the group, for our listeners who are unfamiliar with this gathering that we just talked about, all y'all can chime in. What is the Asian American Pacific Islander and Asian Canadian Music Education Gathering? And why did you decide to join round 2 of it all?
Okay, I'll go first. Sure. So
not all at once.
Not all at once, not at all. So the AAPI/AC MEG, as I like to call it, is essentially, it's a gathering of individuals who identify as AAPI/Asian Canadian, who are also music educators. It was started by Kinvu and also Tina Huynh, and there's never been one before this, which is wild to think about, seeing how um, many of us exist and are around, and like there are a lot of us, and yet there's never been one that kind of has us come together. And it has a broad sense of music education. It goes from elementary teachers like myself, secondary teachers like Darlene, and collegiate folk like Kinh and Tina. And the way I like to talk about it, it's like a symposium without a stick up its butt. It's like people are just chatting about topics, and even though there's a central idea for each session, especially predominant in the first one, not as much as in the second one, but it was just structured differently in a good way. But I remember when it was at Darlene's 2 years ago. I keep on saying last year. It was 2 years ago. um, it was us just sitting on a couch and like Darlene was presenting, and then we kind of interrupted her just to like expound on points. We were just jumping on ideas, and it was very much like a family gathering, chatting about different things, about things that are related to um, those who are AAPI/AAC.
I think what's important to also remember when explaining this is I notice when anytime I tell people like, oh, what this event is, what this gathering is, I automatically find myself saying it's not a conference, it's not a summit, it's not a convention. And I'm thinking like, why am I trying to compare this to these larger gatherings that do not match the vibe of what we are doing? So I literally had to say gathering, but I thought, well, it's not a cult either. Like that sounds very cultish at the same time. But I think what makes it so unique is that, well, norms, because it's intentionally very small, norms were established at the very beginning, so everybody feels both safe and brave to share their thoughts. And oftentimes, especially in a lot of um, larger music ed spaces where people like us are not the majority, we tend to really navigate carefully of, okay, what can I say? Am I allowed to say this? Or will people even understand where I'm coming from? Because I have a very specific lived experience. And in a way, we're almost like fighting to be at the seat of the table. But in reality, we just made our own table ourselves, you know? So that's kind of the flowery way of describing it.
The
I
flower we
love that
wave.
I love that it's called a gathering too, because I really do feel like that encapsulates the feeling of like you were saying, it's not a conference, it's not a summit, it really is like a tight-knit community that we create in those short few days. And that is why like I returned for the second year too of it, and for round two of it, because it really became us just like having conversations with one another and sharing meals together. And that was one of the big things where I was like, you don't do this in any other type of music ed gathering, for lack of a better term, because we are literally like having family style conversations and meals every single day together.
And that's something
Right.
actually, no, you good. There's something I appreciated a lot about the last one and also this one as well. Just this notion of last time we created spring rolls, and it wasn't like no other conference does that, but this was very much we are coming together to break bread, or in this case, break dumplings, or sorry, spring rolls together. Don't give me that face, darling. And just sharing a meal and creating a meal. And food is such a communal piece. And the fact that this is an important part of the one in 2023, and also again this time in 2025, it speaks volumes that this is not just for us to learn, but it's for us to come together.
I love that, y'all.
Right.
I do want to just add from my experience from the first one, at least, I do appreciate like when my experience 2 years ago, how it was not really like this idea of clickiness that you get at like major convention things, like you stick to your people kind of thing. You stick to the same sort of like music education background, your music education focus, and things like that. But this one really felt like no matter where you were in what level of education and background, it was really coming together of like coming to understanding, talking, and like hearing everyone's voice at all different levels, which I found really appreciative on my first go around. Would you say that this time around was something similar to that experience, or what made feel this one maybe a little bit different from the first one?
I feel like this second one was a little bit different in a way. The first one was actually at my high school that I teach at, and I even had my own high school students who also identify as AAPI sit in and volunteer for anything that we needed help with. And I think that was also really, really cool to talk about music education in a classroom with students who I was going to teach these things to. So I think that's something that I think a lot of conferences lose sight of, like, oh, let's all go, 300 miles away to some conference ballroom and absorb information about this lecture and then attempt to give it back to our students. But technically, those conferences are what, March, February, January, when we already have things established versus this is in the summertime when we're actually like primed to get ready for the school year. So I feel like timing plays a huge factor. What made this one different, I think, was a little bit like the location. Location was in a community center, but it was a very intentionally chosen community center because we were focusing on the Hmong population in St. Paul. And it was a little bit smaller. I think attendance was maybe in the 30s-ish for the first one. This was about 15, but there's nothing wrong with that because that's when really everybody has a chance to share something. You're really able to build more relationships and connections with other people. And I think also the way we formatted our talks was slightly different to allow for more reflection.
I also, to add on to that, something that makes this music education gathering special is something that no other conference would touch on, is talking about the broader issues, talking about politics, and like it directly affects us. Directly affects us, and even though there are a lot of educators that would like to state that they take a non-neutral position, or they recognize that being in public education is not neutral, like conferences, because they want to garner to all peoples, like it's very oftentimes as a whole not political. Maybe the sessions might have political pieces, but as a whole it's not, because we are a small group. We can talk about harder things, and also talking about how the current administration is currently affecting our jobs and affecting our livelihoods. And that wasn't the case in 2023. It was a different world then compared to what is now. So I think that played a huge role in our family talks. And we'll probably get more into the weeds of that in a bit. But I think the timing of it this year affects it greatly.
The timing and the structure of like how we format our conversations, because like Darlene was saying, because it was smaller, we were able to really get into thorough discussions about the things that Jonathan is saying about politics and like things in the administration impacting our day-to-day in school. And then it didn't feel like we always immediately had to jump, because a big thing that we always talked about was that like we all have all these things we want to share and these ideas, but we just had so many different topics to get to. So they had created specifically these times called like family conversations, where it was just very loose and it was open for anybody to bring anything to the table. So I think that was really important to the structure this year.
Yeah, and I like family conversations because oftentimes when I go to conferences, or I just think of anyone, sometimes I'll ask someone, "Hey, how was the conference?" And literally all they did was pop in all these different sessions. You just sit, absorb, watch this honor choir performance, watch this honor band performance, and you don't even have to open your mouth to contribute to anything. Versus here, like everybody's voice really does contribute to the conversation.
I love that. Thank you guys for sharing all of that and like that particular why this makes it so special. So on that, moving forward with all of this, because of your experience in there, what was your most meaningful takeaway from the conference or from the gathering that you all experienced? And if you can, what are you hoping to apply it to this coming school year with your kids?
I have one.
Okay, go for it.
I feel like I'm such a foodie, and even when I go to conferences, I always get so sad because I'm like, oh, I have to find a lunch buddy, or I'm always like, all right, who can I like join with to get a cup of coffee, anything like that. Versus here, mealtime, specifically lunch, was specifically planned as part of the gathering. And so Jonathan mentioned that we did Vietnamese spring rolls 2 years ago, and this year, oh my gosh, we got to go to Taiko Suli's family home. Taiko Suli is one of the invited presenters for the gathering. And we went to his family home, and his parents made a traditional mung meal using ingredients from their garden. And I feel like, gosh, if we were a group of like 50, 100, no way would we have fit in that space. But because it was just 15 of us, we were able to fit in their backyard, and they were able to explain the ingredients and we even got to watch them make the soup and make it with them. And that's just and it just reminds me of like, okay, how can I do more communal dining, eating with my own choirs? I mean, we already do like potlucks and things like that, but how could I make it even more intentional than that? So it's given me ideas of how to really strengthen the bonding with my choirs, and I know they're foodies too. So yeah, how about the rest of you?
I think similar with Tekasuli, like he did a session on rapping. And he had us communally create a piece of music together. And there were some interesting word choices that were publicly used and also just between Darlene and myself. But anyways, I'm off topic. She knows, she remembers. But I since like my first year, I've always been striving to find ways to have students create their own music. Um, it always blew my mind. I think we had this conversation, Darlene, when Crystal and I came to Nora's classroom on like it blows my mind that when we have people who just like a lot of their music education is focused on learning as opposed to like creating. And for me, creating is a huge part of my ethos of being a music educator. And so, but creating music, not just like on going on Chrome Music Lab, but like having kids write their own narrative and create their own narrative and share their narrative has been something that's been really sticking to me for a while. Um, my partner Christy and I went to the what do you call it? Japanese incarceration camp last year that her family was at, and it really affected me. And it also affected me in a way that like a lot of these people, these primary source people are passing away. And no one, or rather, should I say, there are less and less people sharing their narrative of things that have affected them. And we need to hold on to that. And then boiled it down to from my occupation, like these kids also have narratives. Even though they aren't, it's not them living in our incarceration camps per se. It's also like they have lived experiences that are important. So how can we have them create music and seeing how it was how his process was really cool and having them create communally. And then my thought is how do we create it individually? There were a lot of sessions, but I feel like he'd be here for 9 hours plus. But that was the one I find that stuck with me the most. Rachel, how about you?
I was thinking a lot about creating as well, but I was thinking specifically about Darlene's session. And when we did, yes, the rhythm, like, so Darlene gave us each a rhythm and we split into different groups to create a rhythm. We'd have to clap along to a song from K-pop Demon Hunters. And I think the conversations that came out of talking just about K-pop Demon Hunters in itself and like how we are going to show our students things in pop culture that are Asian, and this could apply to like any different culture, how we go beyond the surface level of like, oh, this is a fun song, but how do we appreciate this culture? How do we learn more about it? And like why did they make it like this way, like with their characters, or like where does this music and its origins come from? It's something I've been thinking a lot about, especially as like now entering like a second year teacher, is I think I definitely played it safe in my first year, kind of trying to just like to be so truthful to like get my bearings. But now I really want to be able to like dive into the cultures that are in my school, because I do teach in like a really dense area of like just many different cultures amongst my students. And I was thinking a lot about the conversations that came from the K-pop Demon Hunters activity, and specifically how Asian trends, or like I want trends for like lack of a better term, like how different things that are really big in from Asian culture are becoming trends, and where that's becoming a bigger conversation now of like, oh, it's like matcha, labubu, what's next? People are gonna be like into pandan and like ube and everything. That's not just like an Asian vibe. right? Like there is like tradition and culture and reasoning behind all of these things. So I've left thinking a lot from those conversations.
I
Rachel,
love
it
all
still blows
that.
my mind the fact that you've only taught for 1 year. Like,
Same.
girl, you're burning this world up in good ways.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I mean, I feel like honestly going to the first AAPI gathering was so empowering, and what I loved about the second one is that it felt in some ways more casual to me. I think because I was working the first one as an undergrad, but also because the first one gave me the empowerment to feel so much more secure as an educator, and specifically as an Asian educator, because I told Kin so much how life-changing that first experience was to be around so many different Asian people, because that's just not what I'm used to, and what a life-changing experience it was to be able to talk so openly about all those things and also be around a lot of other adoptees as well. So I honestly like credit so much of that to having a community within y'all.
And like similar, I wish I had this when I first started. I feel like I would have had a different perspective of what I wanted to focus my students. Like when I first started, I did not know what I was doing. I focused entirely on just, methodology, which is important, but like identity was a huge focus. Actually, on this, Genesis, do you mind if I do one more?
Sure, go for it.
Appreciate it. Another session that really was like, whoa, was Eric's session. And he didn't have an answer, but I think that's the point. It was very much, he was talking about a music appreciation and what's the point of music appreciation? Why are we appreciating music? What's when we do music, it's not to appreciate it. And also, it's like he mentioned that it's very one-sided when we appreciate music. It is from the teacher's lens, oftentimes. And he then brings up the CT's Arts Admin Association lists of reasons for the purpose of music education. And it was a decent list, but it had nothing to do what music is about. It had more to do with how music serves the core. And it's good to list for music educators on how to advocate for to your admin who don't understand what the purpose of music education is. But it does kind of like not really serve the purpose of what music is. And so Eric's position was like, where is identity formation in this list of 23 reasons music education should exist? It's not there. I don't know if Darlene or Rachel, if you remember any of the points that were on there, that list. Maybe not. All right.
I have to check my notes.
Okay.
I wrote down a lot of notes.
I wrote down a lot of notes too. But the thing that he did end on is we need to talk about the cultural impact of music education. And again, there was no like, it's not like a conference where you're going to get a list of how you're going to do that in a nice packet, but like just positing the question was impactful. Back to what I was saying to Rachel, like if I had this as an early educator, I would have thought of music education so differently. And how could I have helped my students back then so in a different way?
I love the things that you all shared, because the two things that I'll point on right now, and especially in my work that I'm diving into, we touched a little bit on connecting, which is a new standard, not a new standard, but it's like a more emphasized standard in California now, as far as like what music teachers are supposed to be teaching. Here again, coming from the national standards, I can go into like depth on that, but I love how like connecting is becoming more of a presence in music education, and how we can connect students to being understanding of students understand by connecting to what they identify with. And I think it has been so foregone, and now that's coming to a forefront, a lot of teachers now are stumped in answering that question. And I love how, especially in this space that you guys experience, like it poses the question like, how are we going to actually do it? What's the foot on the ground? How do we actually do actionable steps so that way students can see more of themselves while learning? Because we know that when students see themselves in the learning, they're gonna do more. There's more investment, which I love. I also love the fact like all y'all's takeaways was about creating things and allow students to express themselves, when majority of my own personal music education was barely based on performance, right? It was such a performance heavy kind of thing. But music is not just something you perform, it's also something that we create, and we create those spaces for our kids. And being in a program with the school, right? There's a lot of ways to do that and then to access that, and then your different takeaways on how to bring that into the room. Like, I think that's important for other educators just to hear, and also realize, like, hey, this is something that we're trying to work with too. So for those of you that are listening, you are not alone in those things. Like, we're trying to bring them as well. So love it. Darlene, I
And
think you want to add something.
yeah, I think because we're sharing about like connecting and how we bring in this to the classroom, and it got me thinking about how this gathering um like is not the kind of event where you are gonna get like a fat packet of, oh, here are my go-to songs, or like, oh, here's some readings and all that. And I feel like a lot of music teachers just want like the, oh, give me what to do and I'll do it. But the most important part before being culturally responsive or trying to connect with your students is taking the time to do some inner work, taking the time to do some reflection. And I feel like this is the place to do it. A lot of it is reflection, because how else are you going to do those things in your classroom if you're not even connecting with your own identities, you're not analyzing your own privilege, your own bias. So that's a little tidbit I wanted to share out.
Thank you for that. So the next question that I have for you all is, well, the next two, I would say, is pretty meta as far as this is concerned, especially if you're considering music education as a whole kind of thing. And I like these type of questions. This might be difficult to answer. Take your time, honestly. Think about it. But from your perspectives, right, why is this type of professional gathering should be separate from a larger music education conference space? Okay. The idea is, shouldn't representation, right, AAPI, BIPOC, all of that, right, shouldn't that just be highlighted in more visible spaces?
I think it's a yes and situation, right? Because, like we've talked about a lot, this gathering, because it's small, it's supposed to be small. Like, I remember Ken talks a lot about how BU backed him in creating this, and his dean of BU was like, keep it small because that's how it's going to be effective. Because I think inherently the spaces, like if we were at these really large conferences, like the ones that are like super well known nationally in our field, we wouldn't feel as safe and empowered to speak so explicitly about the things that impact us on day to day as educators of color, because there is this inherent safety within seeing people who have the same lived experience as you. So it's a yes, we should be able to have these conversations at like NAFME's main conference, right? Or the one that's in Chicago, Midwest, right? Where these conferences are more, I think, sometimes performance based or just research based, but it's like theoretical research instead of like just talking about what it's like for our day to day. So because we've had a gathering like the AAPI, AC MEG, as Jonathan calls it, we are now more empowered to be able to take this conversation and put it in a space that might honestly be more of a white space, because we know that we have like the strength in other music educators where you wouldn't be able to interact with that. Maybe even, like, I know for myself, I don't interact with a lot of Asian music educators in Boston, but to know that I have people who have the same lived experience and share these same thoughts, it's really empowering itself, just to know that you aren't, kind of just bananas thinking like, oh, where'd everybody at? Like, I'm having all these ideas and these theories and like these thoughts on myself in the field, my students, and how they're impacted by what I'm teaching. Just to have that shared collective feeling, to be able to put that, our experience we had in St. Paul this past year, to put that into a larger space. So it's the yes and of it all.
And on top of that, like I I'm glad that there are institutions like, for example, ORF is instilling the affinity groups to where like people of different cultures are, or sorry, like for example, there is the Asian AAPI affinity group. I should know this, ANHPI affinity group. Uh, and that's where people can come together and talk about things, in a smaller setting. Because I think smallness has a big part of it. When you're in a big group, even if you have a really important idea, you're less prone to share. unless you are just that kind of personality. But that is not always me. I know, like in the beginning of the API music education gathering, also at AC, I remember on the first one, I was super nervous, and I shared this, I think, also on the podcast 2 years ago, as well as to all y'all this past year. I was nervous too because for me, even my own intersectionality is different than a lot of other people's. Being, a mixed race individual who is part white, part Japanese, part Filipino, just or as yeah, just a lot of intersectionalities. And so like I didn't know how I was gonna fit, but because it was small, also because we had a lot of loving people, and also because John Lee was the first person I met, so he's awesome. All of that encouraged me to be able to share more readily. If it was in a big conference, I just would not whatsoever.
I think if this kind of thing, this thing, wow, that's so specific. This kind of event were to be somehow transformed or placed into these bigger music ed conferences, gatherings, whatever, I feel like it would be giving more panel and less conversation, and which is like that's not what this is. So, I mean, I was even thinking about that too. I thought like, well, there could be a way like you could put people into small groups and blah blah blah. But then, it's almost like forced, like it's giving like forced icebreaker. Because of course, like in a conference, you're given a limited amount of time and all that. So I feel like no, it doesn't belong in these bigger spaces because these bigger spaces have a very specific format, a very specific agenda sometimes. And in a way, this is sort of like anti-conference, anti-large scale, whatever. So
I love
Also,
all of
one
Oh, go
one
ahead,
last
Jonathan.
thing, unless Genesis, you're gonna jump on something that
No, no,
Darlene.
I do have a follow-up, but go ahead and
Okay.
finish your thought.
I think another element, something we had mentioned before, is just this: there is no need to explain. That element, there is no need to explain, is
Yes.
super important. I remember in 2023, I believe it was Chris Sung. By the time he came on, he says, "Well, I think I can skip this slide about uh, 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 what was it? What was it? Um,
Like
um,
media, he did
Model
a presentation
minority.
on
yes,
media.
model minority. Yes, I can skip the slide on model minority myth. I think we've all talked about this, and the thing is, it wasn't, and we all talked about it because we've had this sense of we need to defend ourselves, we need to explain ourselves, we need to state things that a lot of our just non AAPI counterparts, but predominantly white, but all specifically non AAPI counterparts just don't may not understand. They may not understand. But as being someone who is AAPI/AC, we know it, we get it, and we don't need to explain it. We can get to the deeper stuff because all this stuff that people may or may not understand, we can just put that aside because we, as a 15 to 30 person cohort gathering, we get it. So let's get to the deeper stuff. I think that's one of the biggest differences.
I love that. Does anybody have anything else they want to chime in with before I get into my follow-up? All right, then my follow-up then for y'all is this. From your experience of attending the larger, more commercial, more, conference type things and this gathering, what do you think those, more bigger, right? Those kind of conference, those bigger gatherings, those bigger conferences can learn from something like this AAPI gathering? If you
That
had
is
your
hard.
10, like if you had your your soapbox, right? That you can stand and you can talk to the people who had this is like, what did you experience here that you wish that everyone in a larger gathering kind of can sort of feel or at least try to experience in those places and spaces. So that way I think the where I'm getting at with this question, so that way we have more brave conversations than having at these small events, right? I think it's also important to make sure that our voices are heard in the masses, just like, what's happening across the world in many places and spaces where minority voices are starting to stand up more, because how can we challenge that sort of the bigger entity?
I sorry to jump. Okay, I think
Okay.
what you shared, Genesis, is key. Like the being brave. I think the people running these events need to be more brave, because I know they share a lot of people share this desire for education to be inclusive and to be, to involve multiple voices, but go the next step. Like we can do like, take bold steps to where like where your views of justice is not just something you place on your website, but is enacted inside the DNA of the conference. So be bold, be brave, and like try that out. Don't be afraid of like the numbers, because also like I know that these things are organizations. These organizations are run by money. I get that, but in the same sense, if the board has a viewpoint of inclusivity, go the next mile and allow that to be said and heard, and go deeper. I think that's the key thing. Go deeper. And don't be afraid of small numbers. Like you can do great things with small numbers. I remember when COVID hit, a lot of people were concerned about numbers going down with a lot of different institutions. And it still is affecting us now that we're in late or post COVID, whatever you want to call this. But like you can do great things with the small numbers. I guess that's my 2 cents.
Love the part about the big on the small numbers, because I think that's something that I had to reshape my thinking about. Like, oh, it doesn't matter how many people I'm in front of sharing this conversation, it's still happening, right? And it's like, even if it only impacts us, like we're then gonna go further and continue this conversation outside of this room. What I think that other, like what I think conferences can gather from what we do is really just the open conversation piece. Like I have to give Massachusetts its flowers. I'm not sure if it's happening in California. I think y'all mentioned something about affinity groups, but we really tried to implement affinity groups in Massachusetts for our state conference this year. And I have to give them so much credit, because I think Massachusetts has been really ahead of the curve in platforming DEIA and not shying away from conversations or having like presentations with the title like eradicating white supremacy in music education, which can be like really daunting topics, right? And stuff that we naturally would talk about in the gathering. But we did this thing this year where we had different affinity groups for everyone from like people who are neurodivergent, LGBTQ plus, POC, like all of these different groups. And that really was great to give the space for people to find in like the bigger organization friends who have shared like similar lived experiences, to just have a loose conversation about it and then be more feel more connected within the field. And I think that worked really well this year. And a big fear we had was like, oh, people are gonna feel left out, or like who's gonna have an affinity group like who is like a white person. But to be honest, what we did is we had all state session readings at that time as well, so it balanced out in different ways, where it was like we are creating all these different groups. And I think that can be implemented into like even bigger gatherings. But my fear though is also that if it gets too big, would we be able to have the same conversation? So that's a really hard question.
Darlene, do you have any thoughts that you want to share? I know it's a big question, but
Um, I don't think it belongs in bigger spaces. Just
that's
knowing
fair.
how these bigger spaces are created, I agree with both of y'all, Jonathan, Rachel. Like it is possible to have little pods, and and yes, there needs to be a possible change of mindset and direction in the board, but for me personally, who is very careful with where I put my energy, I'm like, I feel it feels less work to just do my own thing on the side than to like fight a system that is like deeply ingrained in a very specific way. And I think, I mean, I'm saying this also as someone who took an American music ed history course, and like so much of how music education has gone through our country, it really is reflected in how we do our conferences as well. And so I think it's a little bit of both, I could see it being possible. I'm also like, why wait and be easily defeated when we really could just continue doing our small thing? Because the people who really want to be a part of these smaller groups, they will want to be a part of it, and they will take it to those organizations. I almost feel like there's a bigger impact that way. Um, yeah, there's not really a super clear-cut answer. And I'm also trying to think about what would this look like in 5 years and 10 years? Would things change? Would things be different? Especially with these newer teachers emerging from their college programs who are more well-versed in culturally responsive teaching and all that. So yeah, that's a really big question. Like, why is this here in this document?
If I can add on to Darlene, because I liked what you said. I think these spaces need to, sorry, I'll speak into the microphone. These spaces need to exist so that we can bring it to the organizations. I think it's back to what Rachel said. It's a yes and like the one of the things we talked about in Kate Pollard's session, she was talking about how like as you said, Darlene, choosing your battles. Like, and we need to be the way we enact change is choosing our own battles and recognizing that change is slow. But then the people who are affected by this group right here can bring some sort of energy, bring some sort of small pieces to the bigger groups and recognize that's not going to be it's we can't I don't think we can change the system from like a big system like that like when I say system, I mean like specifically like AOSA or Oak or whichever. But like, I think if we have the pure session that we have with the AAPI/AC MEG and bring it to these groups, we can create these small eventual glacial changes.
Right. And another thing to also think about is who is really teaching the students, the organization or us? So for me, I'm thinking
Mm.
like, okay, like I could try to squeeze my way in to these organizations. We gotta like put more AAPI culture. Honestly, I'm just gonna do the dang thing in my classroom every day. Like, why am I trying to fight these bigger institutions when I could just embed this with my students and then other people hear that and do the same thing? So I have to feel like, what powers do I have already in my arsenal? So sometimes I'm like, I'm not going to submit a presentation proposal to this because I'm just going to keep doing this with my students and talk about it to the people who will listen. Because, yeah, I think we also have to remember, we as in all of us and the listeners, that we we can't forget about the kids who are in our classrooms, and they are the ones receiving the music education, not the organizations.
I love that so much. This reminds me of something that I'm going through at this time. I'm taking a role as a mentor. I'll talk about that more on the episode coming after this. But one of the things that I saw, we call them the CSTs, the California Standards of Teaching. And Rachel, if you know recently on time, you can chime in too. But on there in the like the updated versions, I forget how recent they were, but in the most updated version, there's a lot on like social justice. There's a lot on creating connection for your cultural, like tapping into cultural identities, things like that, that are now part of expecting as a California teacher to do in your respective subject, right? And the fact that California has put that there, and it speaks a lot to what we as educators are now valuing to help our students grow. And I think that it's important to remind our fellow colleagues that this is important, that shouldn't be left to the side, right? Identity in all its forms, in all its capacity really needs to be at the forefront to make sure like our children, again, I said this earlier, but again, our students should be seen in the things that we do. And if we show that we value this, how much more powerful is that going to be for them? So thank you all for your input with all of that, which is great. Now, I like to end things on a very hopeful note and things like that with you all. So my question to finish you out on this is, what do you hope to see more of this, maybe this type of professional gathering, of like the impact of this in the future? What are you hoping to see from this type of gathering flourishing forward in, let's say, the next 5 years, 10 years, what have you?
I hope to see other people, like specifically other, like, I guess, cultures, races, like, do what we're doing. Like, see, like, create their own AAPI music ed gathering, like, for maybe, like, Black music educators or Hispanic music educators, and anybody, honestly, because I have gotten so much awesome feedback from when I've posted about what we're doing, and then people, like, saying, like, oh, I've never heard of something like this before, and getting really excited about it. And I think it really is just exciting for anyone to feel like they have a sense of community and belonging inherently, right? And so I would love to see different ones start to pop up, maybe even in different fields of education. But I think it is really important that, like, it doesn't just stop at API, right? That it continues, especially as educators in the United States, right? Because it is such a diverse population of students we're serving, and it should equally be a diverse population of educators serving those students, but unfortunately that's not the case right now, right? So when we're able to come together in our own collectives and then gather, like, further beyond and bring the same energy into, like, these big conferences we're talking about, I think that will go so far long term.
Thank you, Rachel. Jonathan, Darlene, anything that you feel?
I, the duality of this issue is that I want this to grow and yet I want it small. And so, like, that's always been the hardest part about this. Also, I loved how I learned, I knew very little about um, the Hmong people. I knew very little about that culture, and I learned so much in this. And so I would love to Asia is big. It's massive. It's massive. I don't think I need to get into details why. It just is. And so it would be great to learn more about different Asian cultures that I just don't know. And in the way that we did in these past two times, through food, through community, and through all of the above. So, yeah.
I believe for me, I would just love to see more of these events happen. I mean, we waited 2 years for the next one to happen, but rightfully so. Kin was in Vietnam for a year, and then Tina also had to take some students on a tour, and it is a lot of work as well. But I feel like if it's an every other year thing, you kind of almost lose momentum. So my hope is maybe, I don't know, I'm just gonna put this out there to manifest it, but maybe something-ish could happen for next year, even if it's a West Coast thing. Sorry, Rachel. But you can totally like fly over and
And I would.
Yeah, I
And
know.
you know I would.
I know, I have an
We
extra
should all
bedroom, so you can
send
totally
this
stay.
episode to Kin and Tina so that way, like,
Yes.
they feel the pressure.
Yes, pressure, pressure. But I mean, but they
Positive peer
shouldn't be the
pressure.
only ones, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, it really takes a village to run an event like this and do all the logistics. And so it's a matter of like, okay, how can we make this both sustainable, but also somewhat often enough where people will have the chance to attend? Because I even had some colleagues who were like, oh, I missed the second one now. And I'm like, well, oh my gosh, that's horrible. So, yeah, just trying to think like how can we make this happen more often, but yes, still keep it small.
Yeah, I definitely felt the FOMO this year. So just got when Jonathan reminded me, I'm like, oh shoot, I'm missing out on this one.
And
But
even when
yeah.
you weren't there, I sent you messages. Hey, it's
Yes.
happening in Toronto. Hey, join us.
That's right.
See, now it's giving cultish when you
Yeah.
say it like that.
You know, I'm
Okay,
not against
okay.
that life. It's yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your thoughts and everything that you brought to the table today. And I appreciate what you guys were brave enough to say in this space with me today. I really do appreciate it, all of you, for just like bringing your wonderful minds to this conversation. So I really do appreciate that. We'll be right back after a quick break for the Spiccato.
Hey, we just want to take a quick moment to shout out Mission Trails Financial, the partner making this show possible at no cost to you. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by financial planning, you're not alone. But Mission Trails Financial is here to make things simpler. They offer tailored financial advice for you, from investments to tax and insurance planning, with a team of experienced fee-based advisors who are CFP designated and fiduciaries. That means they're putting your best interests first. Let's face it, navigating the world of finances can feel like drinking from a fire hose with endless options for investments just a mouse click away. But Mission Trails Financial aims to cut through the noise by breaking things down into clear, actionable steps while providing regular updates. Mission Trails Financial believes everyone has the right to work with a financial advisor, regardless of how much you've saved. Mission Trails Financial's focus is building a relationship so you are not traveling your financial path alone. They even help you keep track of old 401ks when you're transitioning between jobs, because your financial future should always stay on track, no matter what changes. So don't wait. Let Mission Trails Financial show you how to make that next step towards the future you've worked hard for. Plus, your first consultation is absolutely free. Just visit missiontrailsfinancial.com or call 619-419-0238 today. You'll be glad you did, because leaning on professionals like Mission Trails Financial is how we get ahead. Check out the program notes for more details. Advisory services offered through New Edge Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor.
Well, thank you all so much for being part of this nearly 7-year journey. Whether you joined us in episode 0 or you just found us today, thank you so much. It means so much to have you join us. And if you want this journey to continue, please, please, please support the things you love. We have a Patreon, right? Patreon.com/classroom, where you can get special merch and other stuff for the class. And if you don't have a coin to toss our way, that's okay. But there is a free way to support us. Leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And you all know the drill. 5 stars only, peeps. Okay. And if you leave a written review, we'll read it on the podcast, right? Follow us on YouTube and all the socials, CH Classroom. And leave this episode a like, write a nice comment, and all those small things that ensure that the mics stay on our side. All right, friends, it is time for the Spiccato. And I have 2 things for you today. And for this specific one, I want to start off with a game that I'm calling Conference Superlatives. That's right, folks. We're talking about that high school senior nostalgia stuff and putting it in a professional conference setting. Right. The rules are simple. I have a title for you, and you just name someone from the AAPI MEG that you think best fits this description.
Does it have to only be last year? Oh, sorry, this year, or
Ooh,
can
that's
include
a good question.
anybody?
Ooh,
I think we should include the previous
I think
years.
both.
okay, we'll do both years. We'll do both years.
Okay.
Okay.
I have to pull up a photo of all of
few here now.
us.
Honestly, same, because I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, who?
I love that the memories as a help out. All right, the first one,
Okay.
the networker. The social butterfly, the person who goes around and talks to everyone and always has oh yeah, we should collaborate. Here's my handles, here's my stuff. The networker.
I don't know, Ken?
Yeah.
He gives networker vibes.
I think it's
to me.
Darlene.
No.
Yeah.
Because I see the other categories and I know y'all are
Oh,
going to
I haven't looked at the other categories, but wait, can we only choose one per section?
I would say one person, yeah, for the people.
Wait,
but it can
wait.
be
Also, guys,
whoever you
don't
felt.
don't peekaboo. Don't peekaboo. What's on? What else is there? I
Oh.
think this is fun
okay.
and not knowing.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to block the document.
Okay.
Let me
Rachel, do you
expand
have a
my screen
networker?
then.
Your networker.
I'm trying to think of who is at the first one too.
I think Tracy would be a good one.
Yeah, I almost want to say Alice as well, but
I feel like Alice. I haven't seen the list, unlike some people here. So I think Alice would be great below.
oh no, you know who I'm gonna say? Chris Kayari.
Chris.
Chris
Yep.
Kayari.
Yep. Sold.
Sold.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Number 2. I'm gonna skip to this one. The Joker, the person who's always making everyone laugh, in session, out of session. Who is the class clown?
Oh my god.
Joseph.
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 Okay. Right.
Tea time with Joseph.
Okay, so tea time with Joseph was amazing. He made us tea, but there was also a bottle of, well, what was it?
I think it was Henny.
So we had special
To be
tea as well.
honest.
Yeah, it was
bourbon.
wild. And it was hilarious. It was bourbon.
one of
Okay.
them.
Because it was hilarious because he was sharing during the last family session. He was talking about how the difficulty of what's been going on, and he's like cradling as he's
Yes.
making this.
And like an inch drops out of it. Like every like 2 minutes you look away and there's like an inch less.
Yes.
Right, and then he'd be like mid sentence, he'd be like, "Oh, by the way, you want some?"
Yeah.
Just casually offering the ball. And the
It's 11 a.m. It's
It
11
was
a.m.
11 a.m. on a Saturday.
Hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
Yeah,
right.
I'm locking in Joseph.
All right, the next one I'm going to go for is the star student, meaning the young gun, the new kid on the block, right? The young new teacher who is just like, oh, okay, I can going super far. Yeah, I know I'm going to be pointing to them over here.
Rachel.
I was gonna say Gareth and Ashley as like a duo in their district.
Oh, that's true. Yes, but technically, you're the odding. An odding is like younger sister.
I am the
Tagalog.
youngest. Yeah.
That's right.
Yay!
Because I honestly I have to go back to like your session that we experienced and the amount of passion and like fire that you brought to it. Is like I wish all my newbies, all my like green teachers could come with the same sort of like gung ho as you did, as you presented. And it was just like, oh, I want
Thank
like
you.
my people to experience you.
And you
I
were even a
appreciate that
teacher
so
then.
much.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't student taught yet. Yeah, I think that was like right upon my senior year.
Locking in Rachel.
Thank you.
I have two more
appreciate
for
that.
you, just for the sake
fine.
of time. The influencer.
Darlene.
Darlene.
Too fast. Too fast.
That was right.
I have no words.
Speech.
I will
Speech.
say I saw the most content coming from your account than anyone
Oh,
else's.
thanks.
I'm just saying.
Live time posting.
I should have done a live or something. So. Anyways, I don't know what else to say.
She even did a hair reveal during the gathering.
I did. What was even funnier was I also had to film content for like another thing, and I was like, Rachel, can you help me film
Oh, yeah,
content
that
for
was
this other
fun.
thing? We even went to a coffee shop just to film. Yeah. Okay, I guess me.
Okay, I love it. And then last but not least, right? I think this is the one like that. It's like when I thought about like superlatives for like this, and this is like a classic. The celebrity, who was like the big meme that you felt was like, wow, we got them to come.
Alice.
Alice.
100%.
Yeah, that was so special when Alice came, because Alice and I had been following each other and been Instagram friends for years prior, and that was my first time meeting her.
Oh, okay. I felt like you were besties already, like beforehand.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we were like through the internet,
online.
right.
but that was my first time actually like meeting her in person and like hugging her in the flesh and all of that.
Oh, I love that. Okay. The reason why also I bring this up is superlatives are, again, all across education in like the fun settings, right, of whatever school life that you guys have. But how would you take this idea of like these sort of identities and bring them into your classroom?
Ooh.
Ooh, a twist.
Yes.
I feel like this could be a really cool activity to do with my students, my older students, on like, okay, when someone gives you a specific superlative and other people have owned that, like, what does that say about you and do you agree with it? Like, do you agree that it's a part of your identity? And then if they don't agree with it, then why? And then it kind of helps like students to really reflect on the kind of personality they give off. I also think about how you can really tie that to their strengths and how they contribute to, for me, to acquire classroom culture. If someone is deemed as a quote unquote the celebrity, or not the celebrity, but like the influencer or whatever, okay, how can they use that strength to spread awareness about choir, to spread awareness about music? If someone is deemed as the, I don't know, the quiet one, or whatever, I don't know, but what other strengths do they have that are still, under the radar? That's kind of, a little bit of the word vomit that I have going on right now.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great like SEL lesson, especially for like elementary, right? Like, and then defining that you aren't just one thing, like you're saying, Darlene, right? Like that's like, oh, you're this, and like, what does this mean? And you can be like also this and that. We can all change throughout like the school year and the days and the weeks. Like some days, I think of it almost as like in elementary school when they have their like class jobs throughout the school year and that they rotate, right? So like some days I'm the helper, but sometimes I'm also the leader, or sometimes I'm, like the quiet one, or I'm like, opening the door. I don't know. Like all of these different things that I can just rotate, and that like as people we're constantly evolving and changing, but that our job is to be doing these superlatives where we're helping and benefiting a community like that we're creating in the classroom.
And for my choir, I've been doing it since like my first year. It's something similar to this. We call it the Gag Awards because there are the more official awards that I gave at the end of the year, but then also the kids kind of contribute. And they're like, and I've been constantly trying to refine it so that it's not either pushing people out or making fun of anybody. Because there was a situation one time that's like, okay, I cannot have that award ever again. No more. I was inspired by my band director, Tamara Page, who did this back when I was in high school. But I think, yeah, I'm constantly trying to refine how can I make this into a better thing. So.
Awesome. Okay. I love what you all brought to the table. Number two is something a little bit more concrete, but unfortunately, my delivery didn't come in time. So you're going to have to deal with the link that I'm sending you. And we'll find some fancy way to, while I'm talking, put it on the screen for our listeners to see on YouTube. These are called, if you haven't seen them before, they're called agility circles or agility
I
rings.
want these
Do you
so
want me to
bad
make,
for my classroom.
do you want me to make you host so you can share it?
No, it's okay. We can do something. We can do like
Sure.
the visually kind of thing later on. So don't worry about that. I recently came across this. I'm totally stealing this idea. I found it as on my scrolling and whatnot, and I've been seeing it all the time. I just learned what they're actually called. And a use of this that I have seen is there's an activity where you have your students jump to the beat inside these circles and like have formations while they're dodging each other. And I cannot wait to do that with my kiddos. Um, but other than maybe physical manifestations of musical ideas, what other things could you use these agility rings with your students? What's something unique that you think you could do with these?
And to our audio listeners, these are like a set of 24 hoops, colored hoops. And so,
They can be bigger too.
ooh,
I'll also mention that there are some connectors that you can get in these packs, so that way, like they're like don't move around as much, which I'm hoping and looking forward to do. And for our listeners as well, you can find these on anywhere big shipping areas. I'm hoping you can probably find it at your local sporting goods store as well.
my first thought is rhythmic elements, like just that each color can represent a different kind of rhythmic piece. So red is possibly quarter note, is ta, whichever have you. Blues, toddy, yellows, takadi, whatever. So what you step on is what you perform.
Ooh, I like that.
So maybe one kid creates, and then the class has to like, clap as they go along. Maybe I'm not sure.
Dang, you thought of that fast. I've been seeing the same videos, Genesis. I put this on like my supply wish list this year for my district because I want to do those dances so bad. I do need to figure out how to do them first, but
So
I definitely want to do it this year.
my brain blast with this in particular is I'm gonna be setting them at rings of three, so that way my students have an easier time learning tinikling. Because it helps them with the create, right? You set the three going on, the pool noodles in the middle, kind of ideal. So that's one of the things that I definitely thought in other density. I also thought another one. Actually, no, I'll save it just in case it is someone that comes in. Darlie, do you have anything that comes to mind?
I was thinking more like community builder games that are not necessarily connected to music, but in reality, any community builder game is connected to music making. Because if you're not vibing with the person next to you, are you really connecting with each other? So yeah, I was just thinking of like I've seen this activity somewhere on Instagram where, well, first of all, it's a bigger hula hoop. So I was thinking, would this work? Where everyone has their back to a hula hoop, and then it's like musical chairs, but with the hula hoop. And then when the music stops, they have to put the hula hoop like around a cup in the middle. So you're all working together to achieve that goal of putting it on
Mm.
something. But I was like, that's not gonna quite work with this one because it looks a little smaller.
Yes, these are
So
roughly about like 16 inches in
right.
diameter.
Are they
So,
weighted too, or?
um, from what I've seen, not really.
I think they're flat.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Oh, I know. I could you use it like a frisbee?
I was thinking like a rhythm toss.
Ooh, yeah, rhythm. Ooh, yeah, rhythm toss.
Ooh,
Okay.
that's awesome. Anything with hand-eye coordination, I always love too.
Yeah, because it's
Because we
also
can
like
work
fine
on that.
motor skills.
I also thought of it as if you have enough of these would also be great to use as like find your groups. Like, okay, for those of you on the green rings, you're going to be the green group, you're going to be the yellow group, or your groups need to have one yellow, green, red, blue kind of thing going on. So for those of you who are trying to find new ways to, find your selective groupings with your students, definitely something y'all can do. Right.
Or even like, yeah, you could do that and be like with the green group, red group, and yellow group, and then be like, okay, with your team, could you come up with a skit using these rings? So they're given maybe a prompt and they have to create like a little scene on the fly with it. So they have to be like super creative, and it's cool because then you could really see kids' personalities and who takes the leadership and who's like, I'll just be here being a caterpillar or whatever. But because I think that's really cool. That's me right now. I just started school on Monday, doing lots of icebreakers, community builders because I want to see how the group works, and because that will help me figure out how to plan the rest of the school year.
Love it.
I liked, by the way, Darlene, something you posted on. Speaking of you being the what is it? The what did we
The
just establish?
influencer.
The influencer. The bit that you posted, or like maybe a month ago, a few weeks ago, like just like during summer, not while you are probably lesson planning. Pause. Get to know your students first. And oh, sorry, my hand was up, so it's. Shoot. Anyways, sorry. To our listeners, they have no clue what's going on. But yeah, you posting that, like you saying that it's don't try to lesson plan an entire year when you don't know your kids yet. So take time, pause. And so I'm glad. Yeah, it's cool to hear that you're getting to know your kids first week and ways like such.
Love it. Well, thank you all again for being here for my very first hosting episode. And as always, we're going to start with Darlene, and then we'll go Rachel, and then we'll go Jonathan. Any shout outs and personal plugs before we sign off?
Ooh, shout out to my amazing singers and piano players at La Quinta High School Choir, and shout out to my whole performing arts team. We are about to do a musical this school year. It'll be our first musical in 6 years. We'll do
Ooh.
Frozen Junior. So very excited to do all of the things and all the snow and all that. And you can, are we saying like where people can follow us? Oh,
Yes. Yeah,
perfect.
where
Okay,
can
you
people
can
find you?
follow me on Instagram or TikTok at the Darling Music Teacher. I'm also on Substack where I occasionally post longer form writings and things like that. Yeah, I'll bounce it over to Rachel.
Rachel.
All right, I'm gonna shout out the specialist team at my school because we're about to start the school year on the 25th. And I'm really excited because one thing I love about my school is that we're all friends. And so that makes me so super excited to be starting the second year. And you can find me on Instagram is where I'm the most active. I got a crazy digital footprint. It's Rachel Profiling, but the zero or the O in profiling is a zero. RACHEL profiling with a zero. And I'm gonna bounce it to Jonathan.
Shout out to we have a new theater teacher. She actually joined us the ending of last school year, but I've known her for a while because she's, we know each other, whatnot. And we're also doing a musical for the first time ever. It's and I looked at the score and it's like, holy piffle. It's Moana Jr. and this is gonna be a lot of work on my end, but I'm excited for it. And you can find out how that goes and all my other things at Mr. Seligman, MrSeligman on Instagram and also TikTok and a little bit on the Biskies. I'm still trying to rework my post Twitter phase with written stuff. So, and Genesis, over to you. Oh, sorry.
Awesome. Well, I am going to unapologetically shout out all my new teachers that joined my team this year. We got, I think, roughly 6 or more new people in for just elementary music, and I'm so excited to see what they're going to do this year, especially my mentees, because I'm going to be forcing myself in their lives and like seeing how they grow. And I'm super, super just like can't wait to see like this new blood in my district and how they help further everything in there. So shout out to all of them. And you all can find me on Instagram at Mr. Santos Music Teacher. There is a period after Mr. on mine. I will be posting more, especially promoting chaotic harmony stuff. I am very, very it has been very quiet since I first started that, but one of my things is to just make it a little bit more active. So follow me there. And then follow the cast at CH Classroom on all the socials. And thank you all for joining us for this episode. And we'll see you back for the next one, everybody. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.
Do you know those like high school kids that don't leave when you leave?
Yeah,
Like,
the
stay till,
Velcro
like,
students.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They stick
Velcro
around you,
students.
and like they wait for you to dismiss them because like all they want to do is hang around with you.